Hello, fellow travelers, and welcome to the Traversing the Stars podcast. I am your guest host, Barney Smith of Storycomic.com, and we're excited to have with us here Jeff Haas. He now boards the mothership, and you know him as the host of this podcast, Traversing the Stars podcast. Jeff, hey, you know what? It's great to have you. It's great to have you on the podcast.
It's great to be on my podcast. the very best one.
So you're celebrating your second anniversary on doing your podcast.
Exactly. It's my bicentennial.
So this is exciting. Yeah, so this is exciting. So how many podcasts then? Just to remind our viewers and listeners. So in 2 years, how many interviews have you done so now?
Oh man, it's been over 300 and some. Because they also count the shorts that I do, so it gives me a pretty high number. But if you count the shorts, it's marking me at, let's see, 445.
Holy biscuits!
But if you take away the shorts, I think I'm around 350.
Wow. Okay, man. Jeez.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah. Talking about in your second year here. So, how was this past year been for your podcast?
It's been good. I mean, there's been ups, been downs. I've made it through the writer's strike, and I made it through the actor's strike. So, not yet the actor's strike. I'm making it through the actor's strike at the moment. Hopefully it ends soon. So, I mean, that's been a hurdle because it's been took a cut out of some of the guests I would normally get. But on the other hand, I got some great guests this year. I mean, it's been a year of some fun people. I mean, like Lance Hendrickson was freaking awesome. He's been on my show, and that right now is the one that's like the top of my list. I had Joe Quesada for the World of Comic Books, top of my list. Louise Simonson, Jerry Ordway from the World of Comic Books. There's been a lot of interviews that I've been very proud of, and I've had what's this? I can't remember the name. Can't pronounce the guy's name. Cem or Migulu. He's a Turkish actor who was in the Rise of Empire Ottoman, and that one was a great fun interview. So it's been fun. I mean, like I said, you have your ups, you have your downs. It's been like a fun dramatic TV series. Ups and downs and some celebrations, but it's been fun.
So I'm really curious because you mentioned too, because you have a very eclectic list of guests that have come on your show. How do you determine which guests that you want to come on your show? Because you are able to get some pretty interesting folks to come on.
There's a varied method. The primary method is, or way I determine is, do I like them? I'm pretty much at the point where I can choose to talk to the people I want to and not talk to the people who I don't want to. There's a little bit of sometimes a publicist will come to me and be like, hey, can you talk to so-and-so? And I'll be like, sure, I'll take that interview, especially if I want to get to know the publicist and we kind of want to build a relationship. Sometimes I'll do that. But a lot of it's just I want to talk to him. Once again, going back to Lance Henriksen, I interviewed one of the actors from a movie he was in called The Artifice Girl, and I noticed and Lance Henriksen was in the movie. I was like, I want to talk to Lance Henriksen. I like him. So I reached out and he said yes. I was like, there it is. I mean, it's a lot of the times it's me watching a television show or a movie and enjoying myself, and then texting the publicist of the person involved in the movie or TV show as I'm watching it and saying, hey, I want to talk to this guy. And then them saying yes. And then I interview him. and that's fun. It's like interactive TV. So I'm like talking.
Right.
Like, there's been a few times I've been able to get in. I'm having conversations with the director of a movie or a actor in a movie I'm watching or a TV show I'm watching. And as I'm talking to them, I'm watching the movie that they're in, talking about the movie that they're in. I'm like, this is like interactive TV.
So how do you determine some of the questions that you ask your guests?
Well, I start off first with my getting to know you, which is always a question, the inspiration question. What inspired your love of whatever? What are who your earliest influences? That's just like a getting to know you one. After that, I try once again. Maybe it's just being selfish, but I like to ask the questions I want to know the answers to. And it's a little self-serving, but it's kind of how I view it. I think to myself, what is it that I want to know about? And I just hope that those who are listening to me care about the same things that I do. But if they don't, I at least had a good conversation. And I'm good with it. But usually, I mean, I do my research. I try not to talk to anyone where I didn't read the book or comic book. I'm not talk to anyone who I didn't watch the TV show or the movie. If I'm interviewing a composer, I guarantee I listen to the soundtrack. And then as I'm listening, I try to think of what am I curious about. Recently, I did this composer Trade Toy who did Castlevania Nocturne, and there was a song on Nocturne called Divine Bloodline, I think it's called, and I loved it. So I was like, hey, I'm going to interview the guy, and I'm going to talk about this song because I like it. I'm curious about how it was done this way, so I'm going to ask him those questions. I interviewed Jerry Ordway recently, like I said, for Death of Superman. So I asked the questions I wanted to know, like, why did he do this in this story? Like, explain to me how he got to this point. And every so often when they talk to me, I just get curious, like, huh, that's interesting. What about this? And they, but for the most part, it's for my own entertainment. And then hopefully other people are equally entertained by things I care about.
And so talk to us a little bit about like the inception of the creation of your podcast and how has it evolved since your initial thoughts and ideas of what you thought your podcast would be.
Originally, those who I won't say follow me, but I don't know if anyone really does for that long. Anyone who recognizes me at all, knows I came from another podcast. And I was their public relations manager, and I was doing a lot of their interviews, usually 2/3 of their interviews. And the thought occurred to me is, if I'm scheduling the interviews and promoting the interviews and getting the guests for the interviews, I might as well be doing my own show at that point. Right. And then the other thought was, people on the other show, they would sometimes be like, oh, I don't talk to this guest, I don't talk to that guest, or blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, if I do my own show, I don't have to listen to anyone complain about who the guests are going to be because I choose them and I want them. So I might as well do my own thing. So I decided to do my own thing. Originally, early on, anyone remembers the show, there was a partner who I was working with originally who bailed out pretty fast. So it became a one-person show pretty early on. And it's basically been how I envisioned it. I like to think it's better than I started it because I think I'm getting better at editing. I got better at not looking foolish on the set as much as I used to. Hopefully, a better camera a little bit. But it stayed in many ways what it always was supposed to be, which was me interviewing people I want, talking about what interests me, and then crossing my fingers and looking for an audience.
Yeah. And originally we focusing mostly on just say like sci-fi actors and things first.
This has always been a geek-centered podcast,
Right.
mostly because I'm a geek. So my guests are geek-centric. Originally, I think I was assuming it was there. At first, it was a lot of comic book people primarily, and then became mostly actors. Now I'm back to being primarily comic books again because of the actor strike. There's always been mostly geek-centric. I mean, it's not always been geek-centric. There's guests who are definitely not geek-centric. In the world of actors or that are, a little more mainstream. Someone's coming up shortly. On Monday, I'm interviewing someone from The Walking Dead, which I guess maybe that's geeky. Okay, maybe that is geeky. Never mind. Every once in a while, I've been talking to people who are more like straight drama. Rise of Empire Ottoman was not geek centric. It was more just Netflix, but that was a show I just liked, and I was like, hey, I'll talk to that guy, and I got the guy, and so it basically has been what it is, which is just me just enjoying myself and getting viewers from time to time.
Have you ever watched like any of your earlier episodes and then see how things have evolved for you?
I don't even watch my current ones, other than for the editing process. I realized I really hate listening to myself, which is probably not the best advertising for other people to make them watch my show. But but I realized I don't like listening to myself. I cannot, I used to, some of the actors I've interviewed over time, they've said, I will not watch the movies I'm in. They'll act, but they won't watch the movies they're in because they said, I can only see what I do wrong. So when I watch episodes of myself, I'm like, oh God, why did why I stuttered over there? That was a stammer. How many uhs am I going to say in a 2-minute span? Maybe I can add an extra or so. Maybe that'd be helpful. Maybe if I talk even faster, that'll guarantee me to get some more listeners because they won't be able to understand anything I'm saying. So that's fantastic. I get like really harsh on myself when I listen to myself, and I'm really glad that as a host, I don't talk that as often as my guest does because I think I'd be miserable listening to myself for an hour talking. But I find listening to myself exhausting because I only hear the mistakes and I do plenty of them. Or I'll watch my video and be like, oh wow, look, I'm squinting my eyes again. That must be entertaining to watch for someone to watch on TV. I can't hope that they're watching me on full video because I'm really twitching my face with this one.
So how have you seen yourself professionally evolved over the past year since the first year you did it?
I'm trying to get better at slowing down my speech. That's something I've been paying close attention to. I'm getting better, I think, at preparing my questions in a way that feels natural asking. A lot of my original question I would start doing it would be these really kind of like drawn out, like very much like trying to sound uber professional. And as I'm trying to speak to the person, I realize this sounds really clunky because it's not how any person in the world would actually ask a question. So I'm writing them out to be a little bit more natural. So when I'm asking the question, they just sound more natural. And I think I'm getting better at asking questions without the written questions on my phone. I think I was very reliant on my phone questions. I always write them on my phone, and I usually prepare my 10 or 12 questions. I was, always reading the next one. But I think I'm getting a little better at just ad-libbing questions and just naturally asking what's in front of me instead of worrying about what I have on my phone. Because that's kind of like a crutch. I'm trying to like get more used to a free flow of conversation versus interview style conversation.
So expand on that. So what are some of the ways that you would actually make the question seem more natural? What would you do to rewrite that?
I do a couple of things. First, I know myself. I have a stutter, and I know which words I stutter over. So I write questions that I know won't have words in it that I'm going to stutter. That's just like an internal thing that I just realized, okay, I know I'm going to stutter over that word. So I better take it out and figure out a better way of phrasing it. So I don't stutter. If I stutter on the show, I know I'm going to get kind of flustered. I'm going to stutter more. So I can't be doing that. So I got to be a little more careful. I try to keep my questions shorter rather than longer. The shorter the question, the more natural it's going to probably sound to me. And I try to word it in a more of a conversational parlance versus a very formal question on that one, which is another way how I approach it. And I try to write the questions in order that I anticipate the conversation going. So I don't have to go back and forth to try to figure out which questions I've already asked. So I'm getting better at anticipating. If I ask this question, the odds are they're going to talk about this, which means this is going to be my next question. And I can kind of anticipate a full conversation that way versus throwing in just a bunch of questions and then trying to figure out which ones feel better in the conversation at this point, which looks, if you ever see me looking down for extended moments of time on my interview, I'm going through my questions and taking off the ones I've already been put up. And that's not usually the best way to go about it, but that's an insider trick. If you ever see my eyes darting down for long periods of time, I realize he's already anticipated my questions later. I need to go through and delete them.
So talk to a little bit about just from the editing perspective of it is like, so you set up the interview, you do the interview. What happens after the interview?
I have my least favorite moment of my entire interview, the intro, which I hate doing the intro. I don't know why, but for some reason it just like burns my ass a little bit. Like I just don't like doing the intros. But I have to because it's part of the show, and I got introduced who I'm talking to. But for whatever reason, the intros always make me nuts. It's always the least favorite part of the show. It's always the part I'm like, oh God, here it comes. Here comes the intro. I got to do this for a while. And if you ever heard the outtakes, it's basically, hi, this is hello, fellow fuck. Okay. Hello, fellow. Okay. Hello. Shit. Edit out, delete, let's try a new one. Hello. After about 20 minutes of it, I have my intro. Eventually I think I'm gonna move to having the guests do their own intros. Eventually just to save me the aggravation of it. And also one other trick, guys. Anyone who's watching the show, if you have ever heard the guests do their own intro, it's because I couldn't pronounce their names properly. So I had them do their own intro. But I've never phrased it that way. I'm usually like, okay, can you just give me your can you let's do an intro. Can you do the intro for me? And they'll do it. And just for a little secret for the fans of the show, it's because I couldn't pronounce the name and I realized I couldn't do it. So I decided it was just more natural making them do it. And then I just weave it into the show. So that's a little tip for a little behind the scenes tip for anybody. If you're ever wondering why I don't always do the intros, it's because once I get through the intro, which is like I said, my least favorite part of the show, it's about an hour and a half of editing using my Windows Share Filmora, which is a pain in the ass because the program is weird. It's like temperamental, and the amount of times you accidentally delete things off it because it's being weird with my mouse is also probably part of my aggravation sometimes during the editing process. But some stuff I've been a little less anal retentive about what I'm editing than I used to be. I did try at first. I know I think you do it. And I know Cody does it where you edit all the ums and uhs and stuff like that. And I did that at first until I realized there's too many to stop and the floodgates open up too deeply and I can't spend all my time doing it because I do it too regularly. So I decided, for the most part, during the show, the uhs are natural Jeff's part of the show, and I'm usually editing out only the really bad parts. So the long-term stammers, the stutters, sometimes we'll cut out if it's more than just like the initial stutter. If it's like an elongated stutter, I'll cut that out. The guest I don't often edit, though. I did have one guest that had made me edit his episode 7 or 8 times.
Oh, geez.
Until I finally sent him a copy I call it final. And I guess he got the hint because he stopped asking me to edit. At that point, I'm not gonna say who it was, but I kept. Sometimes an actor wants the rough cut so they can tell you where they want the cuts. And I make mistake once in a while in agreeing to that, and that's never good because they will make you nuts. Because believe it or not, actors are very arrogant and narcissistic. Believe it or not, and many times. So when you give them the right to cut their own episode, they'll keep coming back to you with like, cut this 2-second part out, cut this 3-second part out. Can you cut this little 2-second part out? I didn't like how I twitch in that moment. Can you cut it? And at some point I just wrote in, I kept doing like draft 1, draft 2, draft 3, draft 4, draft 5. Then eventually I just wrote final draft. And he stopped asking me. So I think I got the point across and I was done with it. I'm like, no more. This is it. I've been as nice about this I'm going to be. But for the most part, I've been kind of more relaxed with the editing, for better or worse. I mean, it's possible that I should become more intentional with the editing, but at the same time, I think at this point, maybe if you've been on the ride with me now for 2 years, you either are deaf and you don't hear me talking, which is probably you're only watching like a closed caption version, which is nice. Or you have incredible patience for us and ums and everything else. I'm just gonna let it. So, and I can just let it go because you've already accepted that that's how it's gonna go. So at this point, I'm just riding with them. But editing is always where the frustration is never on the show. The editing is where things get frustrating because that's the least fun part of every podcast is the editing.
Right. And so how much should you mention? It's like, so how many interviews do you do per week then?
For a while, I was doing 4 to 5 interviews a week.
Wow.
Um,
Okay.
because of my new job, and the hours of the new job and the work social for the new job, I'm down to basically doing 2 a week now. Because I don't have the time for any more. I do one on Friday because it's just easier. 'Cause I don't have to do any prep for Saturday because I don't have school on Friday. And
Hmm.
I don't have, and Monday I'll do a few because it's after a weekend, so I tend to be just more awake on Mondays. I'm like, you know what, I can handle a little longer day today and do the interview. But I'm down to two, which is, you know, means I'm posting less than I used to. I was posting 3 to 4 episodes a week. Now I'm posting only 2 a week, or one a week, some depending. But for a while I was doing 4 to 5 a week. Sometimes the weeks I'd actually done 6 or 7 interviews in a week, depending
Hmm.
on the demands of the week. Sometimes, like, I think my record was like 8 in a week.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. And so where do you see the most feedback that you've noticed from your interviews? Is it usually like actors, actresses? Like, is there a certain genre or medium that you see
Um,
a lot of feedback that you get?
Actors, 100% actors. The
Yeah.
worst ones, writers get the least. I mean, writers of like TV show writers and movie writers get the least amount of views. Usually, directors don't do very well with me, but actors kill it every time.
Mm, yeah.
And Star Trek, man, so much of my early building of audience came from Star Trek. I've interviewed 20, maybe 25 Star Trek actors and directors and things of that nature, combined, and the fans always of Star Trek always come out to those interviews. I mean, they're hardcore. They watch almost every interview I have is Star Trek. Will get a huge view count, um, like, usually in the hundreds. So yeah, I owe a lot to Star Trek. Star Trek people have always been good to me. So tip of the cap to Star Trek fans out there. Thank you for your support. But actors always do well. Yeah, it's almost 100% actors, that are always
Wow.
my top. A couple of composers. Well, one composer's in the top. The one from Avatar, Simon Franklin, was a really good one that I had, and he brought in a lot of views. Um, Hugh Howey, the writer of the Silo books, got a lot of views. So it was my rare, really big author interview that did really big. But basically, it's actors. If you can find an actor, um, people just love hearing actors talk about their stuff, and they will come out in droves for the actors as long as it's a show. Usually, that has some following, some fan base. They'll come out in droves for them. Comic book
Wow.
people, is on the lower end usually for me. Often, not always, but often. Um, but at the same time, depends what the comic book is. If it's DC and Marvel, higher end. If it's an indie book, lower end. So if you're an indie comic book fan, guys, get on the views, make some clicks. Make people want to keep indie guests on your show. But usually, like I said, it's always going to be actors and Star Trek.
Okay. Yeah. And so do you see that also as like, do you see like some, as you mentioned, Star Trek has a lot of it. Is that something that you've kind of gravitate? So what made you gravitate earlier towards Star Trek material?
One, I love Star Trek. I'm a Star Trek. I'm not as hardcore maybe as some. So I don't ever call myself a Trekkie. I think that's a certain level of hardcore that I don't think I'm quite there with. But I love Star Trek. I love Deep Space Nine. I love the original series, Next Generation. I love the movies, and you can't argue with the following. I mean, when I thought about getting my guests, my first thought was go where the people are. There's a song I
Mm,
think I just referenced, "Go where the people are," or "I want to be where the people are." I don't know, but anyways, I want to gravitate towards where the fan bases were, and Star Trek had a big one. And at the time, I think it was Star Trek Discovery that was
mm,
coming out when there were seasons. I was like, I'm gonna live on that show and get their get because that's what people's talking about. And then Strange New Worlds came out, and Picard came out, and they were popular, and people were wanting to know about those shows. I was like, that's where I want to live. I want to. It helps. Sometimes need to find the audience. Sometimes you don't wait for the audience to come to you. And Star Trek was one of those great situations where I went to the audience and they turned up, turned out for me. But Star Trek, I mean, I love Star Trek anyway, so it's also easy to make those interviews, right? It's like, do I need to watch the show? Well, I'm watching the show anyway, so I might as well ask some questions about it. It's not, sometimes I have to watch a show because I have a guest. or I'll get a guess of a show I'm curious about, so this will be my excuse to watch it. But Star Trek, I was watching it anyway, so it's like recently, last week I interviewed Cliff Idleman, who was the composer of Star Trek Six, the movie, and I thought to myself, I'd seen Star Trek Six 15, 20 times. I mean, I didn't really even have to rewatch the movies to ask the question. I know it. I know it. I know it almost by heart. So it makes the interviews also a lot easier when you already know the material.
And so because of that, have you been able to, when you ask your questions, are they specific to like say the lay watcher, or are they specific to other Star Trek fans?
Um, I think I hit on a combination of both.
Okay.
Some of the questions are pretty straightforward. You know, how did you get involved with Star Trek? What do you like about the Star Trek franchise? I mean, the basic ones. I nerd in a little bit, and then I'll get the very like like for Cliff Idleman, one of the questions, it was talking about a particular piece of his composition. I'd be like, on this piece of music, you have this instrument playing here, here, and here. Is that representative of this, and or that, or is that more representative of Kirk, or is that this or that? Which is kind of getting into the weeds a little bit of the material. But if people know my show, they know I will frequently get into the weeds a little bit and kind of get into like the uber geek nerd questions at some point. And because at the same time, that's what they are curious about too. Because if you hit it right, you're going to ask them a question that no one else has asked them yet. And when you get those questions, their faces light up because they're like, oh, this guy really knows my stuff. So let's have a real conversation. And when that happens, if you always guess a lot better, the guest always lights up. And now you got something going right now. And yeah, it gets into the weeds. And the average person is like, why do I care about such and such? But I'm happy and he's happy. And the guest, or she's happy, the guest is happy. And that's kind of the whole point.
Right. Yeah. And so what were some of the interviews that you did that you felt that you got like something really juicy, like there was like first that it was ever revealed? Like, was it any questions that you asked a guest where they kind of gave you like an exclusive?
There's been a couple of exclusive. A lot of them are, I don't know about exclusive, but there are moments where I'm just like, wow, he said that. if you watch the Lance Henriksen interview, once I'm going back to that one, he says something during that interview where I'm like, oh shit. I don't know if he should have said that. But yeah, thank you. That's going to the show. Like David Hewlett is one of my favorite guests ever on my show. And with him, it's basically just like bullshitting with him for an hour and a half of an interview. And he's always one of my favorites. And he always says something that I'm thinking to myself, well, that's kind of interesting. I hadn't thought about that. Or he'll give me like a little insight to something I hadn't thought about asking. And he's always a really fun one. Have I got an exclusive? There has been ones that I've gotten exclusive on, but for the life of me, I can't remember off the top of my head. I will say this though. I get so many exclusive when the show is over. Like sometimes I could accidentally just be like, oops, I accidentally recorded that back on the show. That's in the show. But because I've gotten some insights from things that was like, oh crap. I didn't, that's not even being reported anywhere. And I'm like, oh, ugh. I can't be on the show, can't be in the show. He made sure, he asked for it not to be on the show. It's out. But I get the scoop and I'm just like, oh, it's so tempting to be like, oops, it definitely made it in. But I can't do that because honestly, I gotta pretend to be professional. But I've had a few of those where I was like, wow, damn, I can't believe you gave me that information, man. That was probably something you should have kept to yourself. But those always get, I always make sure they're not in the show because once again, I gotta always protect the integrity of my guests. I don't want to do anything or say anything that's going to get them into any kind of trouble. But I've had scoops. Like certain writers coming on a new book and they'll be like at the end of the show they'll be like, hey, just to let you know, you might want to ask me back in a couple of months. I'm like, why? He goes, oh, I'm going to be doing this book for this publisher and you probably want to ask me some questions about that. I was like, yes I do want to ask you those questions. So so I know to contact them in a month or two and get on their books. I'm trying to think if there's anyone who gave me an exclusive that I was like, oh, I gotta post that. I've got a few people tell me that they're going to be back on. They're going to, I feel a few people have been like, oh, I'm going to be in season 2 or 3 of this show. And I'd be like, oh, I don't remember that being said anywhere. And they're like, oh, yeah, no. I was like, okay, are you sure you want that in the show? And if they say no, I'll say I got to cut it. But sometimes they keep it. It's been in there. But Pacific ones, I can't remember. It's been a long year, and my brain apparently has been fried for the last few months. But there's been a lot of episodes where I've been very happy with the information that they revealed. If you ever want to know about the ones I really find interesting, parts of the interviews, go to my YouTube shorts. They're 1-minute clips, but usually they're the juicier 1-minute clips where they're like saying something. I was like, oh, well, that's really kind of interesting. Let's put that on. Let's get that into a 1-minute clip. And that's usually when they're saying something a little bit more, you know, interest, a little more interest, a little more specific. So if you go to the shorts, you're going to get a lot of the more choice moments of the podcast, and some of the ones that are a little more interesting.
Right. Yeah. So does that happen though? Because you do mention that you do give them an out by saying, "Hey, you can check this. You get if there's anything at it," but they'll let it go through, right? They'll just say
how I start before every episode that I do. I talk to the guest for a few minutes, and one of the things I always tell the guest is, I said, just let you know, I edit my show, and I give 48 hours for edits usually. So I tell them within 48 hours, whatever you want cut. After 48 hours, it's in the show. And sometimes most people don't usually get back to me, but sometimes they do, and sometimes they do in a very panicked way. I'll get some panic emails like, you got to cut this. You got to cut this thing out. That's going to get me into trouble. You need to cut it. I was like, all right. I'll make sure I'll cut it out. I've had a few panic emails where someone definitely wants something removed after they said it because they thought they sounded like an asshole or something, or they said something they thought they were going to get killed over. And they're like, one guy literally did tell me, goes, if you leave this in the episode, someone may try to kill me. You need to cut it. And I was like, okay, that's a good reason. And I cut it. So I don't want to get the guy killed. Though that would be a great episode to put out there. But usually I always give them the out. And if they don't take it, well, then it's in the show. And once it's published, it is what it is. I'll let them know, hey, I gave you the chance. It's in the show. I've only had once or twice when after it's been published, someone come back to me and said, you need to cut this. I really want you to. And I still do. But I don't want to advertise that too much, though I did just say on my show. So technically it's advertised, but no one's watching this episode anyway.
So let me ask you then. So what's in store for year 3 then?
Well, a lot of it's going to be about this actor strike. Unfortunately, part of the Actors Guild strike says that no actor is allowed to do interviews during the strike, with a few exceptions. I have an actor from The Walking Dead, Daryl Dixon, coming on because The Walking Dead AMC Plus made a deal with SAG, allowing them to keep filming, which means they also could keep promoting. So I got them one on my show because it's within the SAG agreement. Most SAG though is a no. They can't do it. So a lot of still is actors, writers, and comic book people. I mean, not actors, sorry, composers, comic book people. They said next week you got Jerry Ordway, you got let's see who else. I'm gonna check my own notes because for some reason I didn't bother memorizing it. I mean, just for the month of November, I got some good people. John Layman is going to come on to talk about his new entry into the Spawn world as a writer for Spawn. Now, that was one of the cool ones where after the interview, I interviewed him for In Hell We Fight. And after the show was over, he was like, you want to invite me back in a couple of months? I was like, why? And he's like, well, I'm going to be writing for Spawn soon, and you may want to interview me for Spawn. I was like, I like Spawn. I will interview you for Spawn. And so now once it got announced, he said, let's set up that interview. So I'm going to interview him for Spawn, which was a cool one. I have Jeff Parker. He does Negaduck from the Darkwing Duck series. That's just going to be a fun one. Animal Dunn is a good one. She's a producer of the Kane Court Martial, which was on Paramount Plus. It's a movie. She's one of the producers on it. So I look forward to talking to her. I'm trying to get bigger actors, trying to get bigger comic book people names. I'm just hoping for an overall big year as people start recognizing my show, or I don't know if people recognize my show. Whatever, people may maybe just finally get tired of me asking them and decide just to come on. That's a possibility. I'm also trying to, and the nice thing too, as your subscriber count keeps going up, you start getting better opportunities to talk to people, because publicists will look up, check in on you. And as usual, send them like Apple Podcast links, because they don't show you your listener count. So sometimes that's just a better way of not revealing if your numbers are lower, and sometimes. But the nice thing that YouTube is consistently growing, and the bigger the subscriber count is for YouTube, the bigger guests you're going to get, because they're going to recognize, because better or worse, subscriber count is legitimacy. The bigger the count, the more legitimate you look. And as I'm growing more of a subscriber count, the more legitimate I'm getting, which is giving me better guests, which is making me get more subscribers. And it kind of cycles through in this beautiful, entwined snowball effect that's going on with this. So I'm hoping just to keep growing bigger and bigger. But some of it's going to be based on the actor strike. So the actor strike is over, I'm going to be going crazy, typing a whole bunch of stuff and trying to get as many guests as possible within the week, the schedules I have. A few people are letting me know, come back to me in the spring, hint, hint. And I was like, okay. I'm coming back. I'm hoping to get more David Hewlett interviews. I will, like I said, he's one of my most favorite guests. So when whenever I can connect with David Hewlett, I'm gonna do it. And I would like to, if I can get a quarterly thing going with him, that'd be fantastic. But he's been on the show now 3 times. Yeah, like I said, the goal is to get bigger and bigger. And when hopefully the strike is over in time for me to get some more Star Trek guests in there before this show is shut down and whatnot. So yeah, I'm working on that, and fingers crossed that the guests just get more and more interesting and fun.
Right. Cool. Well, this is great. So, I mean, it's so great to, it's a pleasure and an honor to be here as a guest host for your 200th episode. Second year.
Second
anniversary. Yes.
Second anniversary episode. Yes. I don't know if that's it's certain arrogance to celebrating myself, but I figure, what the hell? I'm going to celebrate myself, because this is a free interview for me to post. So I'm going to go and do it. And like I said, thank you for spot hosting for me. And you've done it before in the past. People who know the show know that you've done it before. And we'll be doing it again, because eventually I'm just going to throw some episodes at you. If you want to take them for me, you're welcome. But like I said, the nice thing is, I think the first year is easy, because you kind of run on just adrenaline and the newness of it all. The second year is where you are fighting the burnout, and you're fighting the monotony of the whole thing, and you're fighting the downturns, because everyone who does a show knows it's not just an upward trajectory. I mean, at least not for me. I'm sure some people are up, but that's not me. I get the wave, hey, everything's perfect. I'm growing so fast. Oh no, not growing so fast. Son of a bitch, what did I do wrong? It's all me. And then, oh my God, look, we're growing so fast again. This show is perfect. Everyone loves it. The ups and downs. And I think that's what the second year looks like. It's that up and down feeling that you get in the second year that you don't always feel in the first one, because the first one is all so new that you're just kind of like, I'm doing it. I'm doing it, everybody. Look, mom. And then the second year is more like, okay, let's see what this brings. I've done it the whole second year. Let's see what happens. The third year, I'm kind of hoping for, because I think the third year is the anticipation year. The first year, the third year is like, well, I got to be even bigger than I was the second year, because the second year grew above the first year. So, I expect even bigger numbers. But, I've not been to the third year yet. So I'm kind of curious how that looks. But if anyone wants to just like flood me with subscribers and do like a massive like showing of love and support and just give me 1,000 subscribers all at once, that'd be fantastic. And that'd be a great way to start my third year. So, I'm going to throw that out there to anyone who knows 1,000 friends.
Right.
You got nothing better to do, please go ahead and subscribe to me.
Right. Cool. Well, thank you so much, Jeff.
It's totally my pleasure. And thank you so much for doing this for me, since you get very little, nothing out of it. So thank you so much.
I get friend points.
You do. And anytime you want to talk to a guest and you got an hour to kill for somebody else's benefit, please let me know.
Yeah, absolutely.